Welcome to the Tradar's ongoing special coverage of Survivor UK episodes 13 and 14. I'm Matthew, I work in TV development, and until now, I had never watched Survivor.
And I'm David, and I've been covering Survivor since season one of the US version over 23 years ago.
Usually, this podcast is dedicated to the traitors, but David and I have joined forces to take a detour and cover the new season of Survivor UK. Each week, we've been giving you a new twist on covering Survivor by not just recapping the two episodes, but looking at both of them from our two very different points of view. So, whether you are new to Survivor like me or a veteran of watching many seasons, we'll have you covered.
That's right. And, we were seeing more of the, I would say regular type Survivor play as we're moving along here in this season, which is good since the season's almost over. It's, good that some of the players are, definitely catching up here.
Yeah. I'll just have to take your word for it. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know if this
true.
is normal.
I mean, what's normal. But I think I mentioned before, it's like I've seen some people say it's like each week is a new season of US Survivor as they're catching up. And this one was, episode 13 in particular was, amusing in many ways, as we will soon find out. But yeah, it's definitely stuff that I could see happening on almost any Survivor season. So that's fun. Before we jump into the episode, I don't know, did you have any other preliminary questions or thoughts?
I don't have any questions. My lingering thoughts coming into these two episodes are that the pair of episodes last week, 11 and 12, really were a highlight of the season for me so far. The double of Doug and then Tanuki gone.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really reached a peak at that point. So it's definitely going into these two episodes. I was excited for what was going to happen now.
Okay. Well, let's see what happens as we go into day 27. Matthew wakes up and tells us he did the right thing. And as this started, I have to say, I thought he was going to say, I woke up and I thought about it and I did the wrong thing. So I was very happy that, he actually said, no, I did the right thing.
Yeah.
And then he basically gives his own version of why Tanuki lost, even though I already did mine on TikTok. So Lawrence says he came out clean, which even as I'm watching it, before knowing anything else, I still say was complete BS. For reasons that we discussed last week. So,
yes.
Leilani realizes Matthew voted Tanuki, which, brilliant deduction. But Nathan says they need to be nice to him, so he believes that there's forgiveness and a way back. So Nathan talks to him, and Matthew pretty much tells him the full truth about the others telling him he was going to get picked off. Matthew tells us things that, frankly, could have come out of my mouth. It's an individual game. You have to take emotion out of it, do what you need to do. It's his game as much as anyone else's. As a matter of fact, I already made that into a TikTok before we even got this podcast going here. So go, Matthew. Not Matthew. I mean, you should, you go too, but especially it's confusing. Then he tells Nathan he hopes they're still good and he'll tell him what's up next time and shake his hand and stay with his word. But he also points out that, Nathan doesn't have much choice other than to go along with him. Matthew then talks to Pegling and Hannah, and all of them say they still want Christopher out. That man has gotten under their skins in a way that I rarely see. It's like they just got it locked into their mind. We must get Christopher out.
Yeah. And even at this point, I thought, well, you've been saying that for 3 or 4 episodes now, and he's still here. So I already, even this early on in this episode, I thought, I'm not really expecting him to go anywhere.
Yeah.
I kind of, he's become such a main character, and he's sort of pantomime villain that I think he's going to be here a while.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, Matthew tells us his plan all along was to appear naive, but really be strategic. And he knows they probably think they have him on his side, which they literally say a moment later. But he knows he has to get rid of those two next. That would be a Pegleg and Hannah. And he adds that this is a game and you have to be strategic and you have to tell one person one thing and another person another thing. So go, Matthew, again.
Yeah, he seems to be doing. He seems to have figured things out. But on the other hand, I think Nathan, compared to him, actually hasn't figured things out yet. So
Right.
Matthew is saying things like, "Yeah, you really, you just have to say different things to different people. That's just how you play the game." And then Nathan is surprised that people are doing this.
Yes.
So yeah, it's not looking like Nathan is fully getting it.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of not fully getting it, he Nathan talks to Leilani.
What,
And
it's just what I was going to say. It kind of makes sense that him and Leilani have paired up.
um, he says that he knows Matthew could easily do to him what he just did to Tanuke, which, yeah, he could. But despite,
And you're allowed to do this to other people
right.
too,
Yeah.
Leilani.
Yeah. Well, Nathan, remember, they have done this to other people. They did it to Doug.
Yeah. She did.
But
She did. She voted for him.
yeah, when they do it to Doug and lie to people, it's okay. When other people lie to them, it's the end of the world. So yeah, I have, and this is something that sometimes people misunderstand when I'm talking about things. I have no problem with people lying. I mean, anyone listening to me should know that. But then they'll hear me complain about, oh, well, they lied and got dug out. And out of context, they're like, well, why are you complaining about that? It's not the lying, it's the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
So,
And yeah, Leilani at one point in these discussions uses the word ruthless. I think she's talking about Matthew
oh,
voting out Tanuki, and she says, "Oh, it's so ruthless,"
mhm.
and it is ruthless. But I sort of think, yeah, so what? This
Yeah,
isn't real life. It's okay to be ruthless.
right. Yeah, it's like, it's like in the traders, and it's like, oh, they were ruthless. It's like, yes, that's what you're supposed to be. Exactly.
Yeah,
Um,
but you're right. They can be hypocritical at times, and that's frustrating to watch.
right. Right. When people, and this goes not just for them, but for all sorts of people like this, they proclaim themselves the good people and they're just doing what's right, and but then of course they turn around and do the same thing. But then it's okay. Yeah. In any case, despite Lawrence believing he was in the clear, Nathan picked up on exactly what he did. But he tells us he feels alone in the game without any real strong alliances. Nathan does, which, to which I say, well, then you probably shouldn't have voted out Doug because he was one of your allies.
True.
Leilani encourages Nathan to win challenges so he can stick around without seeming to realize that if they vote according to alliances again, that would mean she would be the target.
Yeah.
So plus it's like, go win a lot, win challenges. Oh, he hadn't thought of that. Thank you, Leilani.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I
Yeah.
thought you I don't think he needs you to tell him that,
Yeah.
but okay.
That's the extent of Leilani's strategy in general. So all right. Well, we move to day 28, and there's a familiar song that plays with the lyrics going nowhere as they show Christopher, Matthew, and a couple others. And I'm like, is this a hint that they're sticking around for a while here? But then as they're waking up, they notice a lobster trap on the beach and four of them go to see it. There's a note on it that essentially says there's the immunity idol locked inside and three keys hidden around, but only one works. They kind of wander away and tell the others and then start to lazily look, but apparently Pegleg doesn't care because, there's a fire to be made and that's more important. The main key hunters seem to be Christopher and Matthew together and Nathan separately. We see a key hidden in some exposed roots near Chris, and eventually he does too. He gives it to Matthew to see if the key works because Matthew is less suspicious. I yeah, we'll get back to that. Um, the key works, and Matthew confirms it's an idol. But then he puts it back in and locks it back up so people don't get suspicious. Now, my immediate question is, why didn't you just pull an Indiana Jones and put sand in the bag
Yes.
and, and keep the actual idol, you know?
I actually thought that is what they had done. I because it seems like the obvious thing to
Mm-hmm.
do. So I assumed they had taken the idol out of the little bag, put the bag back in. But I guess yeah, maybe they should have put sand or some twigs
Yeah.
inside it or something in case people pick up the crate and shake it around. But yeah, I didn't realize until later in the episode that he had left the idol,
Yeah.
and I still don't understand why they didn't take it out.
I cannot explain it. I mean, there was something similar to this in U.S. Survivor season 44, so last season, where there were bird cages with idols hanging, with little bags hanging in them, and they had to find a key and unlock it. It was similar. Um, and those who decided to leave the bag in there, yeah, put something else in it and hung the bag back in there. So it looked like there was something in there. Some just took stuff out and put the bag in, and other people were like, huh, that looks very empty now.
Yeah.
But yeah, just I mean, you're on a beach, Phil, it's like, Matthew, have you never seen Indiana Jones? Really? I mean,
Yeah, like I guess their idea was, oh, we'll go back and get it at the last minute. Like we'll quickly get it before tribal council. But yeah, there's just pick up a shell, pick up a rock, a pebble, put it in there.
yeah,
I'm so confused.
yeah. I mean, if even if he had properly locked it, which we'll get to in a minute, it still means they have to risk another trip to the lobster trap out
Yeah,
in the middle of nowhere. If
yeah,
he's
exactly.
not seen and he goes over there, and yeah, the whole thing doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what Matthew was thinking here.
I say that to myself a lot. I
Yeah.
don't know what Matthew was
Well,
thinking. In the third person.
yes. So yeah. Um, anyway, he, like we said, he locks it back up, except we see the kicker. He forgot to close the latch. And he says the lobster trap is locked and the idol is still in there, so nothing can go wrong. Cut to another shot of the open latch, which tells us everything is going to go wrong.
I have to say now I feel like I really am also the idiot called Matthew. I didn't pick up on that either. That it was open. I did not understand what was going on until
Yeah,
later in the episode when Nathan happens upon the crate, and then I was completely confused. But we'll get there.
I think that you need to study up on your lobster traps. Then is the problem.
See,
Yeah.
I know I haven't been fishing enough. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
All right. Well, before we worry about what happens here, it's immunity challenge time. And this is another classic. They have to stack blocks like dominoes on a beam while high stepping through a wood frame to go back and forth. But if they bump the frame, shakes the beam, knocks down the blocks.
Okay.
So they run back and forth. Several build up, but then they knock into it. It falls down. Christopher and Nathan are near the end, as is Matthew. Matthew places his final block, but then knocks them down while hurrying. Christopher gets them done, pushes down the dominoes, and wins. Because that's the other thing is you have to actually get the dominoes to fall properly. And there have been people in this challenge who thought they had it and did not and had to rebuild the whole thing.
I'm glad when you start off the challenges by saying another classic because it means I
Yes.
don't need to ask if it's a thing. So
Yeah,
thank you.
you're welcome. So, did you have any questions about that challenge? I mean, it was just
uh,
running back and forth as far as the.
yeah, not really. I thought it was good fun actually. I liked watching it. Yeah, I didn't totally understand all of the rules. Like, so I
Mhm.
had to kind of figure out. Maybe I just wasn't listening properly, but no, I had to kind of figure out. Oh, you obviously can't carry more than one block at a
Right.
time because no one is doing that.
Yeah.
And yeah, you knock one over. Joel did say this, just
Mm-hmm.
I didn't completely understand. If you knock one over, you have to like climb back out and then just climb back with it.
Right.
You can't just lift it back up.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, yes. So much for the big plan to get rid of Christopher. Um,
Exactly.
so Pegleg says, have to switch it to Nathan. And Nathan himself knows that he's the target. So he starts idol hunting, as do Hannah and Lawrence. But Nathan decides to go see if there's anything in the clue that maybe he missed. And instead, he finds the open latch. And of course, the idol itself inside. Now, one of the websites I used to run was called the Reality TV Hall of Shame. And this would have definitely earned a Hall of Shame moment for Matthew. Just giving away an idol through just a incredibly dumb move.
Yeah, this is the moment where I realized what was going on. So I
Mhm.
had misunderstood earlier. A, I misunderstood that they had put the idol back, and B, that he hadn't locked it properly. So I was mind blown at this part. I couldn't really understand what Matthew was thinking. Again, I say this to myself a lot.
Yeah. So we might as well throw in a listener question here. Maria asked us on Instagram if anything like this has happened before. And I can't think of a situation exactly like this because they're not usually out in the open, although I did just mention, the birdcage ones. But we've had other weird things happen with idols. Now, one aspect, and I can't remember if we discussed this before, is that once someone has an idol, it is theirs unless they give it to someone else. So you get an idol, you decide you don't care who knows about it, you just throw it down on a chair next to the campfire. Someone can't run up and grab it.
Okay.
They can't rummage through your bag and find it. They can't, if you buried it and they dig it up, they can't find it. It's yours. They can rummage through your bag and know you have it, but they can't actually take it.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, Matthew never took possession of it. He left it where it was. So it was fair game.
Yeah.
If he had just taken it and like buried it in the beach 6 inches away, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
But by leaving it where it was up for grabs. Go ahead.
What also has sort of occurred to me now that we're going back over this is, well, at the time, Nathan finds it. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Maybe he brings it back and he shows Lawrence and Hannah straight away.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like, and Lawrence does seem quite suspicious about the fact that the crate was just open, almost as if he.
What
I
kind
got the
of an
impression,
idiot would do that?
well, either that or I thought Lawrence thought that Nathan was lying. I don't know why Nathan would lie about that, but I thought Lawrence wondered if Nathan had found the key and just didn't want to tell them and was telling a lie about it being left open. But either way, the thing that occurs to me is it doesn't get addressed later on in this episode or the next episode. They don't come back or they don't show us. They don't come back and say, so why was that crate open? They just never show us it in the edit again. Anyone discussing it?
I mean, later we'll get to Matthew and Lawrence.
Apart from Matthew himself.
Matthew and Christopher. Yeah.
Yeah, but amongst the others, no one, it doesn't become this ongoing mystery to figure out who opened it, which is strange.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. Maybe there's a lot that's shared in this episode that we don't see. So, but going back to the idol itself, we have had people hand over idols for one reason or another, kind of like Christopher told Matthew, here, go get this because you're less suspicious. In Australia, a guy found an idol and one of his supposed allies was with him, a woman, and he had really tight shorts on. So if he had tried to put the idol anywhere, it would have been obvious. She had this larger skirt. And so she was like, well, give it to me. I'll hold it. You can probably see where this is going. He then voted him out in the next tribal council while she still had
Oh,
his idol.
wow.
So,
But then how does that? So you said there was a rule
well, he handed it
where.
to her. He gave it to
Okay,
her.
okay.
So
So if
there's no
you sort
such
of
thing,
willingly give it to someone,
right? There's no such
okay.
thing as loaning someone an idol. You can have the understanding that you loan it to them, but once you hand it over, it is theirs. And that's something that happened on Survivor 45 a few weeks ago. And the results of it came this week because someone had an idol. One of his allies said, I think I'm in danger. And he said, well, here, I'll just put my idol in your bag and it's yours. You know, and then he didn't ask for it back after the tribal council where she wasn't in trouble. And so she just held on to it and held on to
Mhm.
it for several game weeks, so several days. And he was like, well, I don't want to ask for it back now because if I ask for it back, it's kind of a clue that we might be targeting her. And
Mhm.
so what happened this week was they targeted her and she used it. So
Yeah. Okay.
um, other times in US Survivor, there's a fairly new advantage in US Survivor that came out called now knowledge is power advantage. And it's never actually been successfully played, but what it does do is if you know that someone has something, you can at tribal council say, like if I were doing it to you, Matthew, do you have an idol? And if you have an idol, you have to give it to me. Um,
Or I
and
say, no, I left it in a lobster crate on the beach,
yeah, well,
unlocked.
yeah, that would have saved it. See, they were just playing that game. Um, and so every time someone has tried to use it, it hasn't worked. The first time was the best because they knew that she had this and was going to use it on a guy. And so the guy gave his idol to someone else and then made a fake idol. And
Oh.
the show didn't tell us this part until after they showed us in flashback. So at tribal council, she says, Xander, do you have an idol? And it's pause and he's acting and he says, no, but you can have this fake one I made. And so,
How do you make a fake idol?
oh, you just gather beads and stuff and string them together. Oh, I guess
I
that's
mean,
something that's new to you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the idols that we've seen are very, very obviously production made.
mhm.
Um,
Well,
so,
well,
well, yeah,
apart
well,
from
that's a
that
good
big
point.
wooden log in the first
Yeah.
few episodes.
Yeah. Um, but a lot of idols are just like beads strung together or a shell on a necklace or
Oh, okay.
so US Survivor has over the years sometimes made them purposely easy to fake.
Ah, I
But
see.
of course, people have caught on to that. And like last season, someone made them with beads he found around, and someone else was like, those are the beads from Tree Mail. I recognize those. You're not fooling me. He's like, no, no, really. It's an idol. Sure, it is.
Okay, so
Um,
you can get crafty.
yes. Yes.
But yeah,
In
the UK
crafty
one's
in
like
both
a
meanings of the word.
yeah,
Crafty as,
exactly.
you know. Um,
But yeah, so the UK one is the sort of gold metal.
right.
So that's what I was thinking. How do you fake that? Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely more difficult to fake.
Yeah, I was just picturing people like
Although, you know,
melting down like
yes,
rocks on the fire or something, carving them out.
I mean, Doug essentially had a fake idol when he left because he had an expired idol. So he could have
Yeah,
told
yeah.
people it was a real idol.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
I think he said in some of his exit interviews that if he had, or maybe on social media, if he had realized he was a target, he probably would have done that.
Yeah.
And this group would have definitely believed him. And, spoiler alert for the end of this episode, we see what happens. Nobody votes for Nathan once they know that he has the idol. So,
Hmm.
but anyway, related to this knowledge is power advantage in the US, people tend to, oh my gosh, now rumors circulate that there's a knowledge and power in play. And so to avoid that, if someone thinks other people know, they will quote unquote loan it to someone else. And So there were, over the past couple seasons of US Survivor, there have been different instances of people loaning it to someone and then that person getting voted out. But then we find out that that person actually gave it to someone else to hold for safekeeping. And so the whole tribe thought that the idol was gone, but in fact it was there. And then this season, a couple weeks ago, someone tried to spread the lie that that's what happened, that he loaned his idol to someone who got blindsided and voted out. So he no longer had an idol that everyone knew about. But then someone else told, no, he's lying. He made up that story. So it didn't work. But yeah, so there are lots of cases in US Survivor now of people either passing idols around or talking about passing idols around. And because of that, having them go a different way. So that's a very long-winded answer to Maria and goes far beyond what she had originally asked. But the short answer is no, nothing like this, because that I can remember, because I don't remember a situation quite like this. Nor do I remember, and sorry to Survivor UK Matthew, but nor do I remember somebody doing something quite this dumb when it comes to an idol. So yeah, like I said, long answer to a short question. So as you mentioned, Nathan goes and shows Lawrence and Hannah and tells them the whole story, which surprises me. And he suggests they should vote Matthew, though Lawrence notes his name was mentioned too. So I don't know why Nathan would mention Lawrence's name to Lawrence, except he's Nathan and he's not very good at the game. And Nathan even says, oh yeah, you could just vote for me and I'll take care of it. Now, if I'm Lawrence and I just heard my name, there's no way I'm leaving it in his hands. Why would I do that? I'd vote Matthew to make sure there's at least one vote headed to Matthew.
Yeah.
So then Leilani approaches Matthew and Christopher with Matthew saying, this was just a funny line. It has nothing to do with the storyline, but it's a funny line. Matthew says, well, we should let her lead the conversation. And Chris says, she won't.
Yes, I wrote that down too.
They talk, but the guys basically tell her nothing. And so, since her whole goal was to find out information, because that's the only way she can do it, she walks away empty-handed. She talks to Nathan, and he fills her in on the plan, with both of them saying Christopher can't find out. Cut to Hannah telling Christopher.
Yeah, the news about this idol spreads within minutes.
Yeah,
it seems. But and then, I mean, as me watching it for the first time, my immediate reaction was, wow, everyone knows about this now. That's dumb. But I mean, I guess it ends up saving him for an episode at least. So, maybe it wasn't. I mean, what did you think as soon as everybody knew about it?
Oh, it was dumb. There was no reason for Nathan to tell Hannah and Lawrence. They are not his allies. He was not going to make them his allies because of this. In the past, sometimes people will tell others about their allies to kind of tightly bond them to each other. Mm-hmm. That was, kind of like, Doug and Ren were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And we see how that went. But to tell Hannah and Lawrence, I mean, those are just two random people of all the people you could tell. So, I mean, it's funny because Hannah keeps talking about wanting Christopher out, but then tells Christopher about the, I mean, I know Christopher has immunity himself anyway. So, but yeah, she tells them about it. And then Chris is like, I can't believe that, because we're supposed to have the idol. He talks to Matthew. Then Hannah gives more information about the hat trap having been opened. I'm literally laughing out loud at this turn of events as I'm watching it here.
Yeah. Matthew is visibly panicking, and Chris is just like so confused. And as was I.
Yeah, and they realize what he must have done. They go to the trap. They find that's indeed what happened, and Christopher not nearly as amused as I am, and he can't even hide it. He's just like, "Oh my God, you're so dumb,"
Yeah, yeah, he's livid. And again, my notes here were simply, I still don't understand why he didn't just take the idol out. What am I missing?
Yeah, nothing. I mean, you're not the
Yeah.
one who's missing. The other Matthew is what's missing. Uh,
Yes.
I mean, I sort of understand Chris saying, "Well, you go do it because you're less suspicious," which is true. But I mean, this is an idol we're talking about here. This is big. You don't just let someone else deal with it. And so, yeah, the whole situation. I mean, Chris really should have been mad at himself to start with. I think he was a bit mad at himself to begin with. But yeah, that's it's just watching it was so hysterical. And if I were one of them, I would not nearly have been laughing like I was. Um, Now, coming back to why did Nathan tell Hannah? Someone asks that, and she says, well, they were up there when he found it. But they really weren't. He found it on the beach. They were out searching somewhere else. He
Yeah.
purposely went over and told them. I mean, it's not as bad a move as failing to latch the trap, but it's still pretty bad.
Yeah. I think they were just the first people he saw and he was excited
Yeah.
or something. Yeah. And just didn't think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just seemed silly to me. I didn't understand why he did it.
Yeah. So then somehow all of the other six, besides Nathan, are standing around when Matthew and Christopher confirm what they all knew about the idol. I'm not sure how Leilani got into this bunch, other than maybe they couldn't get rid of her. Maybe Nathan was off doing a confessional, and so they were all just standing around, or they literally just don't care what she knows. But they're trying to figure out what to do as all of them are standing there, as which Hannah points out, well, that doesn't make sense because literally everyone is here.
Yeah. And so Matthew has this, unless I misheard him, I think Matthew says they should all just vote for Nathan anyway. Um, I,
Yeah.
I think he was, I assume he meant in case Nathan doesn't use the idol. Was that his thinking?
I don't know. Or he was just like, let Nathan decide. And he might have been saying that because everyone was there and he didn't want to like call out a name.
Yeah, yeah.
Now a proper way to do it, we're jumping ahead a little bit here, would have been to split the vote if they could get everyone to agree and have some people actually voted on Nathan in case he didn't play it.
Yeah, yeah.
But on the other hand, it's Nathan we're talking about. He's not devious. He's not strategic in that way. He's not going to not play it. He has it. He's going to play it. So yeah, it's just, I can understand why they didn't bother, I guess. So after the six of them realize they can't really talk strategy with all of them there, they separate out a bit, and Matthew suggests to Chris and Pegleg that they vote Lawrence. Then we hear from the others where votes might or might not be going as we approach tribal council. Once they arrive, Joel asks some of his typical questions and get answers that really go nowhere. And they get to discussion of the previous tribal council voting out Tanuke. Matthew says it had to be done. Lawrence dances around it. Nathan tries to shame Matthew and says, you were part of the top three. But then Christopher asks Nathan, well, if they were part of the top three, where were the rest? And Nathan falls right into the trap saying, well, Lawrence and Leilani were in the top five. Oh, okay. Again, Nathan's not very strategic.
Yeah. And I thought Chris was very smart to ask that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a great question. Yeah, if your plan was to get to the end with Tanuki and Matthew, at what point were you planning on taking out everyone else? And I thought,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Um, it was funny that, Nathan was also saying the trust with Matthew's broken
Hmm.
because he took out, and I thought, well, he didn't take out Tanuki on his own. He's not a sniper.
Yeah,
He
he
was
kind of
one
was.
person. Well, I mean, I guess he was the one that turned on her
Right.
because
Right.
they were friends, but I still thought, you know, other people voted for her too.
But they didn't have the trust with Nathan that he had.
Yeah,
So,
I guess.
um, yeah, but Nathan also claimed, by the way, that finally it wasn't a plan. It was who knows what could happen with immunity and stuff. It was, and this is clearly just him backtracking after realizing what he said, and people aren't
Yeah.
buying it. Um, Lawrence talks about people scrambling, except for the two with immunity, which basically reveals Nathan's idol. And he says it's common knowledge, and Nathan didn't even flinch. So my guess is Leilani must have gone back and told Nathan that everybody knew.
Okay.
I mean, that's the only thing I can think of that would explain it, and it seems like something Leilani would have done.
Yeah.
Um, so it's time to vote. We see Matthew vote Lawrence, as he should. Leilani votes Pegleg because she's clueless. Um, and it looked like Hannah voted Lawrence. So from what we saw, nobody voted Nathan. But he plays his idol. Joel reads the vote. Pegleg, Lawrence, Hannah, Lawrence, Lawrence, Lawrence. So I said last week it was a dumb move for Lawrence to do that, and he wouldn't get away with it. I'm not sure that I expected it to swing back and hit him this quickly, but here we are. And yeah, nobody even bothered to vote for Nathan.
Or Matthew, which I was really
Right.
surprised at. I Yeah, and when they were, they show up one or two votes. So, like you said, the only one we really see is Matthew voting for Lawrence, and then we see Lawrence writing something, and it turns out it was an H
Yeah.
for Hannah, I think. But I thought he was writing an M, so I thought, oh, he's voting for Matthew,
Mm-hmm.
but no votes at all.
Yeah. I don't understand I mean, I don't understand him voting for Hannah, but I, I, I mean, I don't understand a lot of what Lawrence did. I liked him early. I still liked his personality throughout the whole thing, but when it came to actual strategy, he was not up there.
Yeah, I also don't understand. Maybe I'm just missing something very obvious. Leilani voted for Pegleg. She said she called it a burn vote. Is a burn vote a thing?
Um, I missed that she called it a burn vote.
Yeah, I thought this was some sort of survivor phrase.
I
And I
mean,
thought, oh,
it's
Leilani knows stuff.
no, I
Wow.
think Leilani just made up her own stuff.
She made
I
up.
think
Okay.
I think she's just like she didn't know who to vote for, so she burned her vote by voting for someone who was not going to get targeted.
Yeah, well, that
Um,
just seems like not great gameplay, but
no, it's not. I mean, we've seen people do it before where they're like, well, we don't. I mean, it's what Lawrence did last time. He voted for
he
Pegleg
did.
because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and in Lawrence's case, it came back to bite him because he knew about the plan and didn't do anything to counter it. In Leilani's case, I mean, nobody thinks she's strategic anyway. So, other than those few minutes when Christopher thought she was a genius, and I'm, pretty sure has come away from that viewpoint since then. Um, all right. Did you have any other thoughts or questions about this episode before we move on?
I do have a few thoughts, yes. Mostly about tribal council. Firstly, I just wanted to say that one of my favorite parts of the episodes now are getting to see the glamorous makeovers of the jury members. So Lee still looks like a child,
Yes. A
and
very
the others
angry
look
child, usually.
an angry child,
Yeah.
and the others look like they are off for a modeling shoot somewhere, which is fun. There was something that happened. I was sure you were going to bring this up and you didn't mention it because I
Uh-oh.
thought, oh, David will be furious because there was I mean, it wasn't quite as bad as what Lee did, but
Oh, the heart.
uh, Tanuki had a bit of a whisper and a subtitle. So Joel was asking Matthew about Tanuki leaving and the fact that he had voted for her. And he said, "Oh, I'm sad she's not here, but I just had to make that decision." And cut to Tanuki looking very angry on the jury.
Hmm.
And then and Matthew says, "Well, you can't go back on the past." And Tanuki whispers, "You can say that again."
Yeah.
And I thought, "Oh, she's broken the rule. She spoke. David will be livid."
Well, that was probably a whisper either to herself or to her fellow jurors. And
It was.
it's not uncommon for fellow jurors to whisper to each other. Like, in US Survivor, they'll often, as the players are walking in, they'll often be watching to see um who has the idol, who won immunity. And so they'll whisper, "Oh, look who has it," and then during it they'll be like, "Oh, I don't know who's going," or "I don't know what's happening." And so, yeah, as long as they're not speaking loud enough to be heard or speaking directly to the players, then that's fine and
Okay.
can sometimes be entertaining.
Yeah. Okay. There are nuances to this. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. That's fine.
So, all right. Well, we go to episode 14, day 29, and open with Hannah and Pegleg talking about the game and how crazy it is that Christopher is still there. She tells us that people have had enough of him and Nathan, and their true colors came out. I'm still not sure what those true colors are, other than playing the game. I mean, Nathan's true colors were clueless, and I literally have. I mean, okay, I guess Nathan's true colors did come out in that he revealed who his allies were. But I mean, was that really a mystery? I don't know.
I think it's also because Hannah mentions this later in the episode, spoiler, but I think it's because he had his idol and he felt so safe. They thought he was acting a bit like cocksure and
Mm-hmm.
cheeky, and I thought, big deal. It's so what? I didn't think
Yeah,
it was that bad, but they seemed to be quite annoyed by that. So
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, we'll talk about that more later because I mean, that continues several times in the episode, and it's like
yeah,
I don't get it, but okay. I mean, I can understand being upset at someone for that early in the game, but this late in the game, and that's what you're going to focus on. It just shows me that Hannah is not really a player.
yeah. Or I get, and maybe I'm jumping ahead. I wondered if it was just kind of an excuse from Hannah, and it wasn't really the real reason that she was voting for him.
I mean, it could be, but then to jump all the way ahead, she says it while voting for him.
Yeah, I know. I still just wondered, yeah, if it was just a fake for the camera reason,
Yeah,
but I don't know.
yeah, I
I
don't
don't
know. Um, anyway, back to where we were at the start as we time travel here.
know.
Leilani sacrifices Lawrence's underwear, which she calls his sex pants, in the fire. And it just makes me feel like we've missed a lot. I mean, why are they calling Lawrence's underwear his sex pants? We need to know these things before they just pop that
Yeah.
up on the screen.
And why are they still here on a pole? It was strange. I was
I,
confused.
I mean, they must have been wet and he was drying
They,
them. Maybe he had
yeah.
extras, but why are they his sex pants? Is underwear frequently called sex pants in the UK?
It's, I can tell you it is not a thing. Not a thing.
Okay. So, well, maybe it'll be a thing from now on. Lawrence could open up his own line of sex pants stores.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
maybe he was looking to brand himself. Hmm.
so anyway, Nathan thinks he has Pegleg and Hannah on his side, but knows Christopher and Matthew are after him. But those two guys talk, and Matthew wants to target Hannah because she's in a tight duo with Pegleg. So just all different people pointing at each other. Reward challenge time. And it's another classic, or a variant on a classic. They roll around in a pit of mud, run through a few obstacles to scrape off that mud, and hope that they kept as much on them as possible without actually carrying it. Um, most mud after a time limit gets a trip to the survivor spa so they can clean off all that mud and all the other dirt they've built up, and they get fruit and chocolate truffles and prosecco and more. Now, the smart players should be putting as much mud as possible on their heads. You can't carry it, but if you stack it on your head and can still make it over and under the obstacles, good for you. But several are not. They're just not at all. Now, one thing I did want to say, the background music for this one, it reminded me of Harry Potter. I mean, I don't know why that's the music they chose or why, but so I thought that was, kind of amusing background music for it.
Okay.
So after all of that, running back and forth, Pegleg and Christopher are the top two, with Christopher getting the win. And it looks like Christopher did what I said, because he has very muddy curls, while Pegleg's hair seems perfectly clean. So that literally could have been the difference there.
Yeah, I think Chris also just had the tactic of, which I also think was the smart thing, was just to run as fast as possible. I think he realized it's more important to do more trips than, like, there's probably not really that much difference about how much mud you're going to really get
Right.
on you the more you try. So I think he figured out, roll around fast and just get back to the bucket, get it. I think he just figured out, that you'll
Yeah.
probably win just by doing more trips rather than really putting a lot of effort into covering every inch of yourself in muds that will just eat away your time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true too. So yeah, he gets to choose someone to come with him, and he picks Hannah because she hasn't had anything in a while, he says. And then, of course, Joel says, oh, well, you can pick one more. And he goes with Pegleg. So basically, it's the original Lynetta, leaving the original Calaton back at camp. But as they're walking away, Chris says he couldn't have picked Leilani because he knows she doesn't even like him. And then a few seconds later, Leilani says Chris was never picking her because he doesn't like her. So,
Yeah. And Leilani's devastated because she's missed out the chance for food. And as she said in a previous episode, and she said it again here
yes.
on the way to the challenge, that nothing is more important than food, and that food is currency. And I thought, does she know how this game works?
No, no, she doesn't know. Have you not
Food
learned
is
that
not
yet?
currency. What? What does this mean?
She wanted the Prosecco more than anything when she heard about that.
Yeah. Also not currency.
Yes. Yes.
Doesn't, not a thing, Leilani. Not a thing.
This isn't prison. You can't trade food for, favors and stuff.
Yeah, strange.
Well, I guess you could actually. I mean, if someone was willing to do it, but so at the reward, we see some scrubbing and cleaning, some interesting scrubbing, followed by eating and drinking. They start to talk to Chris, but he has to wash off his face mask. So he leaves Hannah and Pegleg alone for a little while. And Hannah immediately says he's dangerous, but she'll use him when she can. She and Pegleg talk and say they've come so far as a hidden day 2 alliance, so one of them has to win. This is a big piece of news. They weren't just a hidden day 2 alliance from the others. They were a hidden day 2 alliance from, like, all of us.
Yeah. I thought that even there was earlier in the episode, it seemed clear that 3 pairs have emerged. There's Chris and Matthew, Nathan and Leilani, which is bizarre enough to me. But yeah, Hannah and Peg, I thought, oh, didn't know this was a natural pairing. So yeah, I didn't know where that had come from, really.
I just assumed that it was something that happened, kind of like Christopher and Matthew, Pegleg and Hannah had always been on the same side, but, like, she was supposedly close to Lee, and Pegleg was aligned with Lee, so they were they had allies in common. They were in the same overall grouping. And so with them being the only two left, that made it natural. But they're now saying, oh no, they've been a secret duo since day two. And it's like, okay, I guess that is news that we needed to know. So they finish up, return to camp, and Chris immediately talks to Matthew about how they're going after Nathan next, so he can't win immunity. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's day 30, and Matthew is talking and basically tells us there will be a final three. So I guess they'll know how it goes. This was a question we got last time. Will it be a final two or a final three? And Matthew, the way Matthew's talking, he knows it will be a final three. So that also answers the question of, were they told ahead of time? And it seems like they were. Out of the blue, Hannah tells us that Nathan changed and became arrogant. So this goes back to what you were saying. This is when she's talking about that. And then she actually tells him that, and he acknowledges that he did, and they have a nice little conversation about targeting Chris, although Hannah tells us she isn't sure. And again, I don't know why there is so much talking. Why, if you're pissed at someone because of the way they acted, just stay pissed at them. Don't tell them you're pissed at them because of the way they acted.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that maybe she was just, again, maybe I'm giving her too much credit. I thought that she was deliberately trying to perform, and actually, even though she was saying you annoyed me, what she was pretending to do was therefore create a bond. Like, oh, we're talking openly about our feelings, and I've told you what I think, but now we can heal, and that'll make us better friends. I thought if she was sort of, trying to convince him that that this was going to bring them together or something.
Yeah, but he already thought that they were together. So I mean, obviously she doesn't necessarily know that, but it's just so weird the way people talk about things.
Yeah, or she thought, well, the fact that I'm telling him he annoyed me will actually then make him think, well, I'm not. It'll make him think she's not going to vote for him because she told him so openly.
Yes.
So, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess so. In a strange way, it does. In her strange way. But first, of course, is the immunity challenge. And before it starts, Joel also confirms it'll be a final three. So in case we thought Matthew might just be misinterpreting or misunderstanding, no, Joel literally talks about there being a final three. It's like, oh, okay. So in this challenge, they have to run across logs in the water, get keys, dig under a log, and solve a hanging turtle puzzle. Individual bits of this have been seen before, a type of hanging puzzle, digging under a log, that sort of thing. But so it's just basically got different aspects of a typical type of survivor challenge.
It's even kind of a Frankenstein challenge of challenges we've seen within this season. Like, they've already done a physical puzzle, and they've already done an obstacle course, and they've already done a water thing. So I guess it's kind of just mushing stuff together now.
I mean, lots of them have those different aspects. So, this is a different type of puzzle. I mean, in US Survivor, there's often a puzzle at the end of they call it the equalizer in many cases. And so this is a different type, being a hanging puzzle instead of a different type of puzzle. And so, and digging under the log is, that's something that frequently shows up on Survivor. And the funny thing was, I think Chris is the first one through, and he does it the wrong way. But because he's more thin and agile, he manages to get under it. You're supposed to do it the way Nathan did. You're supposed to go, backwards because your body bends that way more normally. But anyway, so like I said, Chris is the first under the log, then Nathan, then Pegleg. Pegleg moves ahead during the puzzle, as does Nathan. Christopher stays close too, but Pegleg ends up winning immunity. So with that, Nathan thinks Chris is going. Chris hopes Nathan is going. Leilani tells Hannah she's voting Chris, as if there was ever any doubt. Hannah notes to us that she thinks the jury hates Chris, so it might make sense to keep him. And it makes me think she may be right. But I also think she needs to worry about something that I'm sure she's not considering, which is the underdog effect. If he gets to the end after being the target all these weeks, it speaks very well to his game. Like, literally everyone was trying to get you out for 7 votes and you stuck around. You must be worthy of the win. And this is something that happens, on Survivor, where time after time they try and then they're just like, okay, well, he must deserve the win.
Yeah. Although this is a point I was going to bring up at the end, but yeah, we could talk about it now.
Mhm.
I thought this was really interesting that they seem to maybe just be keeping Christopher for this reason because they think the jury won't let him win anyway.
Mhm.
And it reminds me of a conversation we had a while ago about, I guess, about British TV audiences and what we respond to and what we like. I may be completely proved wrong. I don't think these British contestants will respect Chris's gameplay. I don't think they'll care that he made it through. I think if they don't personally like him, they will not let him win.
Okay.
Again, maybe I'm going to be proved wrong, but I can't see them for sort of, I say forgiving as if he's actually done anything really wrong,
Yeah.
but I can't see them getting past their own irritation with him.
Okay. Yeah, I have some more thoughts about that at the end too. So, but as they're, in these conversations before tribal council, all of them point to Chris. So as I'm watching, it is very obvious to me that it will be anyone but Chris. So tribal council starts as the jury walks in. Lawrence isn't with them. And it's like, and then Joel says he's been ordered by the doctors to rest, which causes me to say, what the heck? He did not look bad on his way out. There's never been any mention of him being sick or anything else.
Yeah.
Did he overindulge at Ponderosa afterwards? Did he, which would be funny because apparently from reading his BBC interview, he's marketing, one of his projects is marketing a post drinking binge type of drug to help with the hangover, anti-hangover medication. And so, it would be pretty funny if he just got drunk and had a hangover and that's the reason he couldn't come. But he has to rest so much he can't sit on a bench at tribal council. So
yeah, it was strange. At first I thought, oh, he's left. I thought Joel was going to say Lawrence has decided to leave the show or something like that. But
yeah, he punched Lee and then, and then got kicked out.
Yeah. Or being punched by
yeah, yes.
That's probably more likely.
Yes. So Joel asks the players some typical questions and gets typical non-answers. Chris chalks up still being there, at least partially to luck, but Nathan says it isn't, which sounds like a compliment until you realize Nathan wants Chris to be the target tonight. So that's why he's like pumping him up. After some more non-answers, Leilani says people are keeping their cards closer to their chests, which I interpret to mean they're not telling you what to do.
Yeah, I thought, not you, Leilani.
Yeah. And she says it's become much more of an individual fight, which, newsflash, it always was.
Yeah, I feel bad if Leilani ever listens to this. I'm really sorry. It sounds like we're really picking on her. I'm sure she's a lovely person. It's just her gameplay we're picking apart.
Yes, a lovely person, not a lovely survivor. Yeah, it's kind of like when I talked about Travon on the Traders Canada, and I was like, yeah, it's going to be awkward if he ever listens to any of these, but hey, got to call it like I see it. Um, anyway, she says that she's built up strong friendships, though she knows Joel likes to use the word alliances. Yeah, Leilani, that's because what they are. There's a difference between friendships and alliances. And,
Yes.
this is one of those times in the jury, Ashley and Doug exchange a look indicating they feel the same way I do about Leilani.
Yeah, this made me laugh so much.
Yeah.
She's talking about alliances as if it's this like weird term that Jules used, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't have those. And
Yeah.
I thought that's what everyone's doing around you, Leilani. That's what you're supposed to do.
She has friendships. Um, and she says she thinks she has people she can trust to get her further. And I'm just, as I'm watching it, shaking my head because the real reason people are going to take Leilani to the end is they know she will not win. They can beat her. And I know you just talked about, well, if they like you, they'll vote for you. To a point, they're not going to vote for Leilani, whose whole game was tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Yeah, I did. I don't think that I wouldn't take it that far. It's not just who they like, but I
Right.
think that they won't award someone who they see as
Clueless.
conniving or ruthless or
Oh,
whatever.
sorry. You were going the other way. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
The opposite of clueless.
Yeah.
Um, so Chris says it's a game, but they have connections and they'll all be friends afterwards. Pegleg says he's basing his vote on who the biggest threat is. Leilani says she always goes with her gut, which is interesting because what we've seen is she always goes with whatever someone else tells her. I guess her gut tells her to listen to those people. So it's time to vote. Chris, unsurprisingly, votes Nathan. Nathan returns the favor. And there's lots of dark music playing with shots of Christopher. So we're clearly meant to believe they all voted for him, even including Matthew. But then Joel reads the votes. And there's, nary a Matthew to be found, or nary a Christopher to be found other than the two obvious ones. So it's Christopher, Nathan, Christopher, Nathan, Nathan, Nathan. So yes, Pegleg and Hannah did decide Nathan was the bigger threat. Although, as we mentioned earlier, Hannah says her vote was that she was still upset about his attitude, which, if that's true, is a really bad reason to vote someone out of the game at this point. So, what do you think of the decision here?
The decision to get rid of Nathan.
Yeah.
Uh, it's I wasn't that surprised, despite the sort of editing to make us think that I knew I just again Chris has been given so much airtime as this fantastic villain in quotation marks.
Mm-hmm.
I would say inverted commas, but that confused you before.
Yes.
Yes. I wasn't surprised that Nathan went, and Leilani will probably be very upset about this in the next episode.
She's lost her friend.
Yes, she's lost her friend. What a shame. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So there's only five now, five
Yes.
people. It's going to be interesting to see how do you vote in the next episode? How does it play out? I have a couple of final questions and thoughts overall.
Okay, let me give my thought here first.
Okay.
I think this cements either Christopher or Pegleg win.
I agree.
If Hannah and Pegleg were willing to keep Chris now, I think it means they intend to take him to the end and hope the jury hates him, as we had discussed. I, perhaps with my biased U.S. Survivor viewpoint, was thinking there are enough players in that jury who will respect his gameplay and give him the win. But then we got a question from Tradar superfan Michael Collins.
Yay.
And he said, if I get your crash course in the game, the winner is decided by the jury of former contestants, yes? Which tells me the five left need to get Pegleg out before the final jury vote because that jury loves him and they've got issues with Chris and Matt.
I'm
So,
on the same wavelength.
yeah. And so I discussed it with him a little bit where he posed the question over on Blue Sky. Um, but I wanted to mention it here as well. And as I just mentioned, I do think Chris or Pegleg are winning. I think Chris has played a better overall game, but Pegleg has played enough that I think they can justify giving it to him. He's had alliances. He's helped around camp, which I don't consider to be a reason, but other people will. He won a couple of challenges, which I don't consider to be a reason, but other people will. And so, more importantly, everybody loves Pegleg. I don't think we've heard a cross thing said about him. Look at me using British lingo there.
Wait, you don't say cross in America?
Not usually, not in that way. No,
Oh, wow. Okay.
we would have said like a bad word or I mean, yeah, you occasionally hear he got cross with me, but so it's
Oh,
much
wow.
rarer. Um, and so I just think if he's in the final three, he already has the votes from Doug and Lee. He already has Hannah if she ends up on the jury and it wasn't Pegleg himself viciously backstabbing her to get there. He probably has Nathan because they, had some sort of agreement, back from their swap tribe days. So the key is they can't let Pegleg get to the end. I'm sure Chris realizes this, but I'm not sure what he could do about it because he and Matthew need to get Leilani or Hannah to realize it. And good luck with that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I have identical thoughts pretty
Oh,
much.
well, then I
That
wish I would have let you go first. I'm sorry.
No, I also think Peg will win, and for the same reasons. The fact that I think everybody likes him, and I think that is important enough for them to give him the win.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people when Leilani gave him her burn vote, and when Lawrence did the same thing
Mm-hmm.
last episode or the episode before, it just suggests they are so also confident that no one else is voting
Right.
for him. Therefore, they all really like him and are not considering voting him out. I mean, I'm sure he's had one or two or three other votes along the season at some point. Um, and yeah, and the fact he's won a couple of challenges, so they'll quite like that, I think, even
Mm-hmm.
if, like you said, it's not really a great reason to win, but I think they'll admire that about him and I think they'll admire his story, his
Right.
emotional journey and all that stuff. Uh yeah, I can see Peg winning now.
Yeah. And it's interesting for a number of reasons. I mean, from the edit, I am not getting winner edit vibes from Pegleg. Like, they literally showed him more interested in starting the fire than playing the game. In episode 13. Um, that's not typical winner edit material there.
Yeah, but then I guess it's UK, it's BBC One,
Right.
it's new show, audience who doesn't know what this is, and this thing about British viewers liking
Mm-hmm.
the nice guy. And I know the public don't decide the winner here, but I think the other contestants will look quite kindly
Right.
upon that.
Yeah. I mean, it is possible. Now, it's interesting because in US Survivor, he probably would have been voted off around the merge, or at least discussions would have been started because they all would have been saying, well, look at the story he has. There's no way we can sit next to him at the end because there have been, like, foot or below the knee amputees on the show before. Never with a literal peg leg, but with other, whatever you call them. And it inevitably comes up. No one wants to bring it up, but eventually they do. They're like, yep, if that person makes it to the end, they have a really good story to tell, and
Yeah.
so it's much more cutthroat in that regard. That it's like, oh, anything that's good. Well, I don't want to say it's good about you, but anything that tells a good story about you
Yeah.
or overcoming adversity story can be used against you immediately.
Okay. That's
Uh,
interesting.
so just the fact that he made it this far. Um, but yeah, typically we would have, in a winner's edit, we probably would have heard that he had that alliance and things like that, and that he's been playing the game. But like you said, if they're not, if British viewers don't necessarily care how much someone's playing the game, then that may not matter in an edit that they're trying to go for. Um,
Yeah. It's a little like we've talked a little bit about Big Brother and how it's essentially a completely different show
right.
in the States compared to the UK. The UK, there really isn't any gameplay at all, actually. It is a popularity contest, and
Yeah.
that is it. You are voting for the person you like the most. That's how you win that show. And I think
Mm-hmm.
viewers are even I'm a Celebrity Get Me Out of Here just finished last night, I think, here in the UK. And it's like a reality TV guy who won. Spoilers, anyone who's listening, I'm sorry. And he's like a nice young guy. He's like a cheeky, easygoing. And in that show, it's the same. You vote on who you think is like
Mm-hmm.
a nice person. You don't vote on really any tactics they used or anything like that. So I think that's just like a British trope or something.
I mean, in the US, and I feel like, well, either I've discussed it with you or someone else, like even Dancing with the Stars in the US, you will get some people making it far more, far further into the show than their dancing skills should allow it,
Yeah,
because they have a fan base. Or I mean, sometimes politics come into it. Like I think
yeah,
Sarah
yeah.
Palin's daughter was
Oh
there
yeah,
once, and so all the Republicans were like, oh, we have to keep her in. and
yeah, yeah,
um and so yeah, you can get people in there who are terrible dancers but will stick around for weeks just because the fans keep them there.
yeah.
um
And
you
that
know
happens here too. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, and in American Idol, I mean, I haven't watched it in quite a while, but when I used to watch and cover American Idol, it was similar. There were people who were kept around, but um, didn't necessarily deserve to be kept around, according, just to skill. But when you think about American Idol, the goal is literally to create an idol, and so singing talent isn't necessarily all that matters in that case.
yeah,
So I guess it makes more sense in that situation.
yeah.
There was a funny one that I remember. Now this goes back a number of years. The show is called Rockstar in Excess. So do you remember? Do you remember that show at all? Were you familiar
No,
with it?
no.
So, as you know, undoubtedly, the rock band In Excess, you've heard of them.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And they lost their lead singer. He
Yeah.
died. Um,
Michael
and
Hutchins.
yes, I think so.
Yeah.
And so a number of years later, they wanted to, kind of reboot and get a new lead singer. So they
Okay.
did a whole show on it. And they brought these singers and put them through challenges, and it went through votes. But the band had the final say. And there was this one guy who came off as a jerk, as arrogant, to a lot of the viewers, and people kept voting to put him in danger. And every time In Excess would get rid of the other person that was in danger instead of him. And this happened week after week after week. And eventually he won. And it's because the band wanted him from the start. And like the other of the two finalists who had his own band, um, you know, he kept saying that, like, they asked him, like, well, what would you, if you join the group, what would your aim be? And he's like, well, I would try to take the group in a new direction to bring them up to date with the current, whereas the other guy was like, well, I would honor the memory of the lead singer and I would do work with you to keep that sound going. Well, what's the band going to do? They don't want to be taken in a new direction. They want to go with someone who's going to work with them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was funny when there was a force that was stopping the American voting public from doing what they wanted to do because it directly impacted them. And then they released an album or two with this guy before they had some sort of fight and broke up again. But so that is your reality TV history moment there.
Of course, all of this discussion might be completely redundant when in the next episode, Pegleg is voted out.
Yeah. I mean, that's possible. It's, I just don't know how. Like, will Leilani suddenly realize that? I guess it is possible that Matthew gets in Leilani's head and says, you're trying to get the votes of the people who are friendly. Well, Pegleg's going to steal those votes from you because he's friendly too.
Yeah, I can't. It would have to be Hannah. It would have to be Hannah who turned on him.
Which would be interesting after they finally reveal this two-person alliance.
Yeah.
I mean, Hannah would be more likely to. It's interesting because we get kind of back and forth about Hannah. Like, some things she does that indicates she understands the game, and some things she does that indicates she really doesn't. But yeah, it's possible that she does turn on him, and then that's how we get a Chris win.
Yeah, because she'd kind of screw herself over, I think. If she turned on Peg, I think the jury would look terribly upon that, and so they therefore wouldn't pick her as a winner. So,
I mean, the only thing she can do to win, I believe, is vote out Christopher and Pegleg.
mm-hmm.
So it's her, Matthew, and Leilani at the end. And then I think she could make the case, if I hadn't voted out Pegleg, he would have won, so you should vote for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe the people like Doug and Lee and, those folks will vote for her. But otherwise, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that she has a path to winning. As much as Matthew did a good job in this episode of, talking about the game, I don't see him having a good chance of winning either.
Yeah, I did for a brief moment 2 or 3 episodes back, but Peg has taken the lead for me.
So, all right, did you have any other thoughts on these 2 episodes before we look at the preview for next time?
My remaining thought was about Chris and his interviews. I swear, as every episode goes on, his interviews, his confessionals get more and more hammy and over the top. He's being directed. I'm sure that producers are seeing the potential in him as a character, loving it, and just saying more. Chris, do more of that. He's so over the top. I mean, it's really funny viewing, but I think if I went back to episode 1 now and watched him, he was not like this. He's all in.
I don't think they need to be encouraging him for him to get it. I mean, he's already an entertainer. We know that. And I know former U.S. players have talked about, like Rob Sesternino has talked about, when he was out there, he would tell jokes and the producers would laugh. And so they wouldn't have to tell him more of that. He would see what was making them laugh and he would do more of it. And I think Chris absolutely could be doing the same thing, like seeing what is, getting them going and saying, oh, okay, they want more of this, and just hamming it up. Plus, he does have that entertainment career out of here. So even if he doesn't win, he's going to want to turn this into something.
Yeah, definitely.
And in fact, you were stunned a couple weeks ago when we found out that he was a singer And
Yeah.
he just this week tweeted out a version of the Aha song "Take on Me,"
Ah.
and I thought it was a very good version, very well done. Uh, One line in the lyrics is "I'll be gone." And I responded and said, "Well, I hope that's not a spoiler about what's going to happen this week." And it turned out it wasn't, but
Yeah. Now, as we have been recording, we actually have another question on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. This is from Nine Vicman, who asks, have you ever seen anything on Survivor quite like six people, minus Nathan, standing in a group, deciding that two votes have to go, I think they should say to another person, then realizing it has to be someone in the group? I think that's a reference to something
yes,
we talked about when
yeah,
Nathan had found his idol and was off somewhere, and everyone else knew it and was trying to figure out what to do.
yeah, that was, I mean, I not quite like that. I'm sure there have been times when people have been standing around talking and like accidentally mentioning the name of the person that's standing there in the group. I have a memory of that. I can't pinpoint exactly where it was. Kind of like when Nathan literally brought up Lawrence to Lawrence. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like but yeah, for them all to be standing around, I'm sure it has happened. I just can't pinpoint when it has happened in all these
Yeah.
different seasons. But in any case, it's so funny that that they did that, and they're like, it makes me wonder a little bit, like, did they not remember that Leilani was standing there? Did they, did they not see someone? Were they? I think they just weren't thinking. And that's the thing. We do have to remember. They talk about how how little they've had to eat, how drained they are, how tired they are. It does affect your brain. I mean, we can and did make fun of Matthew for not latching that, but it was, brain fog. He hasn't had a whole lot of food, and he just, but yeah, you just got to focus a little bit, and so
Yeah.
yeah. As far as next time, the preview looks like it could be some sort of family visit or family call.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought so.
Um, Leilani says there are no more alliances, which is true for her because all of hers have been voted out and she didn't have alliances anyway. She just had friends. But she didn't know what the other alliances were anyway. So for her saying that, it's meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
We, of course, don't get a preview for the finale because there's one more episode before the finale. But we have that to look forward to as well. Yeah, I think if I have to make a prediction right now, I'm gonna base it on the edit. I mean, this has bitten me before. I just don't see. I don't know how Christopher gets there at the end, but I think Christopher wins.
Okay. I'm going Peg. Peg for the
Yeah,
win.
I think yours is more likely, but I'm going for the longer odds here. Just like I said, based on the edit, and who knows how you watch the edit of the first time the show has ever aired in the UK or
Yeah.
in many, many, many years. I have been challenged. Go ahead.
So, I was saying for about 4 weeks that Doug was 100% going to win, and look what happened. So what do I know?
Yeah, you and me both. So, all right. Well, I do want to mention some information about the two players we lost from their BBC interviews. Lawrence said he didn't know much about Survivor before starting, so all he could rely upon was being a source of good morale through buffoonery, and the ability to adapt to everything and everywhere. He said, crucially, the hidden ace up my sleeve was having the home field advantage, having grown up just around the corner in Costa Rica, consequently speaking fluent Spanish, and knowing the geography, flora, and fauna like the back of my hand. What was for some a foreign and hostile environment was for me my childhood, though admittedly with less air conditioning and food. I mean, remember, these are said afterwards, and I don't get it. No, speaking Spanish had nothing to do with your time on Survivor. Knowing the flora and fauna had nothing to do with your time on Survivor. So I don't get this answer from Lawrence. It sounds very
Yeah.
much like a Lawrence type of answer.
Yes. I mean, unless he's implying he was so at home and comfortable that the psychology of the game didn't get to him as much as everyone else or something like that. Also, then quite surprising that he was the one that got ill and couldn't attend the jury.
Yeah, yeah,
Strange.
yeah. So he did specifically say, I had not watched a single full episode of Survivor, so I set about absorbing Survivor highlights and strategy reels on YouTube and reading forums and Quora articles chock full of advice with questionable results. Yes, Lawrence, some advice to past Lawrence. You should have read through my strategic rules and listened to my US Survivor podcasts. I don't know what
Absolutely.
random stuff you were looking at, but no, it clearly didn't help a whole lot. Nathan said his strategy for the show was to be an asset to his tribe and build strong relationships. Oddly, he said he didn't want to be the strongest player. So I have to wonder if he looked in the mirror before going out there. Or what he thought was, did he think it was going to be like a Mr. Universe contest out there, that they were going to have more muscular people?
Maybe he just meant strongest in a sort of psychological, tactical way.
No, because he said or the weakest and talked more about that too. So
Okay.
yeah. There was no mention of him having watched the show before or studying up on it. So my suspicion is that it was a no on both of those.
Probably.
Yeah. So there we have it. We took a little bit of a random tangent through time and older reality TV shows, but now we're looking forward to finale weekend. If anyone wants to reach out to let me know what you think, I am all over social media and reality TV podcasting. I am podcasting about US Survivor for a few more weeks on the Rob Has a Podcast Network, with the name of the show being Why Blank Lost. And of course, had been podcasting the Traders Canada right here. The two of us covered the finale last week, plus I interviewed the winner. We're working on getting some additional interviews as well, so make sure to subscribe to this podcast if you don't already to get all of that. You can also find all my various accounts through my Linktree at Linktree/David Bloomberg with a dot before the EE in Linktree. Or you can find me on most text-based social media platforms like Twitter and Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg. And on the video platforms, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram as at David Bloomberg TV. Speaking of TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, I'm usually posting about 3 reality TV short videos on that site, including, of course, the mini Why Blank Lost videos for these players, which I will be doing, sometime this week for these two. Plus other Survivor UK videos and US Survivor and House of Villains. And, I guess now for US viewers, there's Big Brother Reindeer Games, which starts this week.
My goodness.
Yes. And so if there's any moments there worth looking at, those will pop up as well.
And you can follow the Trader on Instagram at the Trader Podcast, or on X at the Trader Pod. We're also on YouTube, same as Instagram, at the Trader Podcast. And you can even email the Trader Podcast at gmail.com. I also wanted to say hello to Ailey, who has been listening. Ailey is a former colleague of mine. She'll probably be mortified that I'm mentioning this. She says that the thing is, she might not hear this bit because she says that often she falls asleep to our
There you go.
dulcet tones. So either we're really boring or really soothing, but she's still listening. So she's probably fallen asleep by this point. I've left it
I
too
don't know
late.
how people can fall asleep, because sometimes I'll just randomly yell in the middle of the podcast about stuff. So you'd think that would wake it up, but then maybe that's what the auto leveling does on the podcast editing. Is it takes out some of the yelling.
It does.
But that's no fun. I'm not going to do that anymore then. Now, if anyone would like to help support the cost of publishing this podcast, or just give Matthew a nice little Christmas gift as we approach the season here, you can find him at coffee.com. That's ko-fi.com/Matthew Keeley. And then we will be back in a week to discuss the finale and see if either of us are right or if Leilani pulls out the win and surprises everyone. She really was the strategic genius all along.
Can't wait.
Yes. And so until then, we'll talk to everyone. See ya on social media or again back here in a week. Bye.
Bye-bye.